Alright, so I got a key for the full version of the Mound, Omen of Cthulhu ahead of release, and I want to be upfront that I played this entirely solo. The game is built with co-op in mind, and it is playable with up to 4 people, but I really wanted to see how it holds up if you play this on your own. I'm aiming to keep this video as spoiler free as possible, so any footage I show here, specifically the ones about encounters, is mostly restricted to the first couple hours, just enough so you can get a feel for it. Now if you're wondering why is some of the footage cut off here, this is simply because the game would not allow me to change resolution or the aspect ratio. So firstly, a quick rundown of how this game works structurally and simply gameplay wise. You're based on a ship called the tame. This is your hub between runs. These runs are called expeditions. Before heading out, you sign a contract with the captain. He lays out what you need to bring back. A loot value, certain specific items, survivors, whatever the run calls for. Then you make preparations on the ship. And then you row out to the mainland, the Valdivian coast, somewhere around 1652. And that's a cursed jungle way route there with an ox wagon and a priest. Father Escalona. These guys are following you around constantly. They are basically the mule from Deep Rock Galactic. Their wagon holds your loot and doubles as your way to get an injured teammate out. Your sanity drains as you go deeper into the forest, messing with what you see and hear. And the forest itself, as the antagonist, reacts to noise. The angrier it gets, the less time you've got before extraction. If you succeed, you have new starting points for future runs. And the whole game is aimed at eventually reaching a place called the Mound, which is supposedly stacked with treasure. Keep in mind that this game has a narrative, so it does have a proper ending, though you can keep playing after that. Now doing this whole loop alone changes things right away. Prepping on the ship feels a bit weird, with no one to split the gear with. You're just picking all the stuff for yourself. And of course, you don't have nearly enough inventory space, so most of the stuff goes into the ox wagon. Out in the jungle, after the first mission, going solo does give you an AI companion, so it is not completely you against the world. Now problem is, in the current version, he's not that much help in practice. He's pretty slow, has a bit of a clunky AI, doesn't keep pace well, and when things get dangerous, then sometimes he's there, and sometimes he's simply not. Then of course the priest is more of a story character, and he sometimes seems to wander off on his own too, and the wagon clipping through stuff or getting stuck. And then it is after all, you against the world. And of course you do notice that a lot more solo than you would with real people picking up the slack. Also, this is random, but why on earth is there no jump button? If the ox wagon stands in an unfortunate way, then you can very much be stuck permanently, since there's no way for you to jump out. Now thankfully the sanity system is where solo gets genuinely interesting. The isolation angle in this game is built around wandering off from your allies, being what triggers the worst hallucinations, and lets certain things reveal themselves. Solo, even with the AI companion around, you are basically still in that state most of the time. There's of course no one to actually turn to and ask if they're seeing the same thing you are, which is a very big part of how this is meant to be experienced. With real people. Alone you just have to sit with whatever you're seeing and guess if it's real. It does make the whole thing feel a lot more isolating, even if it is clearly not what the system is built around. Now combat wise the actual weapons are great, but the combat is stiff and awkward by design, and solo that hits harder too. I don't mind that much that it's clunky on purpose. Old survival horror was never about feeling strong, but keep in mind, alone it does mean fights against groups of enemies get tense fast. Also, the bleeding status effects happens way too frequently, and there's way too few items to patch this up. I have died more to bleeding than anything else. Now there's a lot here that actually works. The monster designs for starters are genuinely unsettling, not the rubber suit kind of goofy look that a lot of horror games have, without actually meaning to. These things in this game look wrong in a way that sticks with you. The voice acting is there, and it's also better than I expected going in. The actual weapon variety holds up well, even across the many runs I did. Nothing felt like a clear best pick that made the rest pointless. They all had a reason to exist, and even going back to a map I have already cleared, the objectives and what you actually run into change enough that it never felt like I was replaying the same 15 minutes twice. Of course, the atmosphere alone carries a lot of this. That jungle feels oppressive. It is not just dark for the sake of being dark. Now as for some of the stuff that's rough regardless of solo or co-op, The inventory management is a bit of a pain. Moving items around and checking what something does isn't smooth, though I think a chunk of that is on purpose. Your space is very small, so you actually have to stop and think about what's worth carrying. Like I said, there's no jump button, God knows why. And your guy has stamina, but no stamina bar, representing what's left. Both of these are very odd to leave out. Contracts can also lock you into a loadout that doesn't make sense. A night mission with rain, where you are stuck with only a musket. The game also appears to have some kind of memory leak, because the first 60 or something minutes ran butterly smooth. But then I have to keep restarting the game to get this performance again. So where that leaves things is, I mostly agree with others that the developer's decision to make a full release here is a bit too soon. This game could have used several more months in the oven. The setting, the isolation and sanity stuff, that works pretty well. And it's a good experience solo as well, since you're mostly relying on your own judgment. But the AI of both your companion and the ox wagon need some work. The combat could use some refining. A jump button should be added, and some of the underlying jank should be improved. So as of right now, I'd say wishlist this, and keep an eye on the development process.